The war between the Varelian Empire and the Human Coalition had ended only a month ago. The peace treaty was fragile, held together by promises neither side fully trusted. But to keep the agreement alive, both governments agreed to send cultural envoys to each other's worlds. Among the humans chosen for this task was Captain Ryan Hall, a decorated soldier known for his calm under pressure. He was sent to the Varelian capital as a guest of honor, though the honor felt more like walking into an enemy's den. The palace was massive, with golden pillars and walls inlaid with black crystal. Alien guards lined the corridors, their armor gleaming under the pale blue light. Every step echoed through the hall as Ryan followed his escort to the main reception chamber. It was here that he would meet High Lady Syrinx, one of the Empire's most influential nobles. The air smelled faintly of spice and metal, a mix that made his instincts tighten. He could feel the stares on his back from the alien servants watching him walk by. When the doors opened, the room's silence hit him first. Then his eyes locked on the figure at the center. High Lady Syrinx was striking, her skin a flawless green that shimmered in the light. Her dark hair cut in a sharp bob framing her face. Her golden eyes held a dangerous intelligence. She was dressed in sleek ceremonial attire, but her posture radiated arrogance. She did not rise to greet him. Instead, she leaned back on her throne-like seat, eyes traveling over him as though measuring a piece of cattle. "You are the human they sent?" she asked, her voice smooth but laced with mockery. Ryan didn't flinch. He had heard that Varelians valued dominance in conversation, and Syrinx clearly intended to set the tone. Her gaze drifted to the medals on his chest, and she smirked, as if amused by the idea of human achievements. The alien attendants around her exchanged small knowing glances, already sensing tension in the air. Ryan simply nodded, offering no smile, no bow. The air between them thickened. "Interesting," she continued, her lips curling. "For a species so fragile, you do stand tall. Tell me, human, do you think your kind truly earned this peace, or did we allow you to keep it out of pity?" The question was a clear provocation. Ryan kept his voice steady as he answered, "Peace is never given. It is won, and it is kept." The room went still at his words. The alien guards shifted slightly, and even Syrinx's eyes narrowed just enough to betray surprise before her smirk returned. She rose slowly from her seat and walked toward him, the heels of her boots clicking against the polished floor. The space between them closed until only a few feet remained. Ryan could feel the weight of every gaze in the room pressing on him. Syrinx circled him like a predator assessing prey. Then, without warning, she tapped the back of his chair with her boot, forcing him to shift slightly to keep balance. "Careful, human," she said softly. "This is our palace. Our rules." Ryan's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He could see what she was doing, testing him in front of her court. Any sign of weakness and the whispers would spread that humans were still the lesser race. But he also knew there was a line. The treaty demanded respect from both sides, and Syrinx was crossing it. He kept his eyes locked on hers as if daring her to take it further. She tilted her head, clearly amused by his defiance, and the faintest hint of challenge lit in her gaze. For the next few minutes, the exchange between them became a silent battle of wills. Neither spoke, but neither looked away. The air seemed to vibrate with unspoken words. Then, finally, Syrinx turned her back to him with deliberate slowness, walking toward her throne again. "Sit, human," she ordered, not bothering to face him. The way she said it, however, made it sound less like hospitality and more like a test of whether he would obey without question. Ryan sat down slowly, never breaking eye contact with the alien noble. The chair was cold against his back, the carved wooden arms pressing into his skin. Around them, the alien courtiers whispered to each other in low, musical tones that he could not understand. He didn't need a translator to know they were judging every move he made. Syrinx reclined in her throne, one leg crossed over the other, her golden eyes fixed on him with the calm intensity of someone who already thought they had won the game. The tension in the chamber was thick enough to taste. Ryan kept his shoulders straight, refusing to appear small or intimidated. Syrinx's smile deepened, and she tapped her fingers lazily against the armrest. "Do you know why I invited you here before the council session?" she asked. He shook his head slightly. "Because I wanted to see for myself what kind of man leads human soldiers," she continued. "I wanted to see if the stories about your bravery and your stubbornness were true." Her voice had the tone of someone delivering an insult wrapped in a compliment. Ryan let the words hang in the air for a moment before answering. "You've seen me. Now you know I'm here out of respect for the treaty." His tone was steady, without apology. That seemed to amuse her even more. She leaned forward in her seat, elbows resting on her knees. "Respect? Do you think you're here as an equal? You are here because my people allow it. Never forget that, human." Ryan didn't react outwardly, but the words ignited a quiet fire inside him. Every soldier knew when a situation was turning into a test of dominance. Syrinx was trying to humiliate him in front of her people. The problem was that if he rose to her bait too soon, he would give her exactly what she wanted. He needed to bide his time, but each word she spoke was a push toward the edge. The courtiers' whispers grew louder, feeding on the tension building between them. One of the attendants brought forward a tray of crystal glasses filled with a glowing amber liquid. Syrinx took one without looking and sipped from it slowly. "Drink," she ordered, gesturing for the attendant to offer Ryan a glass. He accepted it and took a measured sip. The taste was sharp and bitter, like metal soaked in fruit. Syrinx's smirk widened as she watched him swallow it without flinching. "Most humans gag at their first taste of our drink," she said softly. "Perhaps you are different after all." Ryan set the glass down on the table beside him. "Different doesn't mean weaker," he replied calmly. Her eyes narrowed a fraction, the first sign that his composure was affecting her. She rose from her throne and walked toward him again, her boots clicking on the floor. This time she stood directly beside his chair, looking down at him. "Stand," she commanded. Ryan rose slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. She stepped closer until their faces were only inches apart. The room seemed to shrink around them. Ryan could hear nothing but the steady rhythm of his own breathing and the faint hum of the palace's energy field. Syrinx tilted her head slightly, as if studying him. Then she reached out and brushed imaginary dust from his shoulder, a gesture that was both intimate and condescending. "You wear your uniform well," she said quietly. "But I wonder if you would still stand so straight if stripped of your rank and protection." Ryan's hand twitched at his side, but he kept his voice even. "Rank doesn't make the person. Actions do." For a moment, her golden eyes searched his, and he thought he saw a flicker of something: curiosity, maybe respect, but it vanished quickly. She stepped back, giving a small wave for him to sit again. This time, he remained standing. The murmur among the courtiers rose sharply at his refusal, a sign that they understood the defiance in his choice. Syrinx's smile thinned into something more dangerous. "Perhaps," she said slowly, "you need a reminder of your place." Her words were not shouted, but they cut through the air like a blade. The guards at the edges of the room shifted, waiting for a command. Ryan remained motionless, his jaw set, every muscle ready for what might come next. Syrinx's gaze lingered on him for a long moment before she turned away again, the corner of her mouth curling upward. The tension in the chamber did not fade. Ryan stood unmoving, his posture steady and unyielding. Syrinx turned her head slightly, as if assessing whether his resistance was an act of courage or foolishness. The courtiers' whispers rolled through the air like distant thunder, each voice feeding the charged atmosphere. She moved with slow precision back toward her throne, her golden eyes never leaving him, her expression one of a predator circling prey. Ryan did not lower his gaze. He knew every second he held his ground chipped away at her dominance in the eyes of her people. Syrinx reached her throne and sat down with calculated elegance. She rested her chin on her hand, watching him as though he were an animal performing. "Trix, you think your stubbornness is strength," she said softly. "But here, stubbornness has a price you cannot pay." The alien guards shifted again, their polished armor catching the light. Ryan could feel their readiness like a storm building on the horizon. His own instincts sharpened. He had been in battlefields where a single wrong word could ignite violence. But this was different. This was not a battlefield of weapons. It was one of pride, culture, and perception. Syrinx was determined to remind him that in her court, his defiance meant little. "Come here," she ordered suddenly. Her voice was calm, but the weight of command in it was undeniable. Ryan stepped forward with even strides until he stood directly before her throne. She leaned back slightly, studying his face. "Do you know," she said, "what happens to those in this hall who forget their place?" Her tone was almost playful, but the undercurrent was sharp. Ryan said nothing, allowing the silence to force her next move. She stood, her figure casting a long shadow over him. "Kneel," she commanded. The word cut through the air like a weapon. The watching aliens leaned forward slightly, anticipation glimmering in their eyes. Ryan's jaw clenched. To kneel here would be to submit in front of an entire court. It would echo far beyond this chamber. He remained upright, the stillness in his stance more powerful than any speech he could have given. Syrinx's smirk faded into something harder. She stepped closer, her golden eyes narrowing. "Defiance," she said, almost to herself, "a human's favorite flaw." She circled him slowly, her boots clicking against the floor. When she stopped behind him, he could hear the faint shift of her clothing as she leaned near his ear. "Perhaps," she whispered, "I should teach you a lesson your body will not soon forget." Ryan felt the stares of the entire room pressing on him. He turned his head slightly, his voice steady. When he replied, "Any lesson worth learning must be earned, not forced." His words caused a ripple among the gathered aliens, some whispering with surprise. Syrinx's gaze flicked to the guards, and one of them stepped forward. The metallic clink of the guard's armor filled the silence, a signal that whatever came next would not be a harmless gesture. The guard stopped a few feet away, awaiting her order. Syrinx stepped in front of Ryan again, her smile returning but now edged with something colder. "You will sit," she said, pointing to a low, unpadded bench positioned beside the throne. "And you will remain there until I say otherwise." The order was deliberate, designed to humiliate. Ryan looked at the bench, then back at her, the message in his eyes clear. He would not yield so easily. The refusal was silent, but unmistakable. A shift moved through the crowd like wind over grass. Syrinx's fingers tightened slightly at her side. Her pride had been challenged, and in the court of the Verelian Empire, such a challenge demanded an answer. She gestured sharply to the guard. The alien stepped forward again, his movements careful but firm. Ryan's muscles tensed, ready for the possibility that this encounter was about to cross into physical confrontation. Syrinx stepped closer until their faces were only inches apart. "You may think this is about you," she said in a low voice. "But it is not. It is about every human who dares to walk into this hall and forget where they stand." Her gaze bored into him for a moment longer before she straightened. "Sit," she repeated, her voice louder now so all could hear. The command carried the weight of finality, a challenge wrapped in authority. Ryan's refusal to obey her command made the chamber feel colder. The alien courtiers exchanged quick glances, some with smirks, others with narrowed eyes. Syrinx stood motionless for a long moment, her gaze locked on him, as if weighing the cost of letting his defiance go unanswered. Then, with a slow exhale, she stepped back toward her throne, her boots echoing in the vast room. "Very well," she said at last, her tone smooth but sharper than before. "If you will not follow my orders willingly, I will ensure you do so. By other means." Her words were not shouted, but they carried across the chamber with ease. Ryan could see the satisfaction in the eyes of some of her attendants. They wanted to see the human brought low. They wanted to see him humbled in a way that would be remembered. She gestured to one of the guards. The alien stepped forward without hesitation, his armored boots striking the polished floor with a heavy rhythm. He stopped beside Ryan, his hand resting on the hilt of a weapon that looked like a cross between a spear and a blade. Ryan did not flinch. The guard's presence was meant to intimidate, but it only reinforced the sense that Syrinx was unwilling to face him without force at her back. Syrinx descended the steps from her throne with a slow, deliberate grace. "In this hall," she said, "respect is not optional. It is demanded, and when it is denied, consequences follow." Her golden eyes gleamed with a mix of pride and challenge. She moved until she was directly in front of Ryan again, her chin lifted slightly. "You will sit," she repeated, "and you will learn that defiance has a cost." Ryan's voice was calm when he answered. "Respect is not given through fear. It is earned through action." The words hung between them like a drawn blade. Some of the courtiers gasped softly, others leaned forward with curiosity. Syrinx's expression remained controlled, but her fingers curled slightly as if she was holding back a sharper reaction. She took another step closer, her presence pressing against him like a physical weight. Without warning, she struck. It was not a blow meant to injure seriously, but it was sudden and forceful enough to make him take a half step back. The palm of her hand had connected sharply with his chest, the sound echoing in the chamber. The guards stiffened, unsure if they should intervene or let their leader handle this herself. Ryan steadied his footing and looked her in the eye without a word. The silence after that moment was deafening. Syrinx's lips curved into a slow smile. "Ah," she said softly, "you are not as easy to break as I thought. That makes this more interesting." She turned her head slightly, giving a small hand signal to the guard. The alien warrior moved to the side, bringing with him a narrow, curved rod that pulsed faintly with blue light. Ryan recognized it instantly as a Varelian pain staff. The weapon was not meant to cause lasting damage, but its effects were notorious. A single strike could send a wave of burning sensation through muscle and bone, leaving the victim unable to remain seated or standing comfortably for hours. Syrinx took the staff in her hands, holding it as though it were both a ceremonial tool and a symbol of her authority. She let the tip hover near his side, the hum of its energy filling the air. "This," she said, her voice quiet but firm, "is how we teach lessons to those who forget themselves." Ryan remained still, though every instinct told him to move. He would not give her the satisfaction of seeing him retreat. Syrinx's golden eyes locked on his, and for a brief instant, the tension between them became something almost electric. Then, with a flick of her wrist, the staff moved. The strike was fast. The blue energy flared as it connected with the side of his hip. Pain lanced through him instantly, sharp and unrelenting. His muscles tightened reflexively, and a wave of heat spread down his leg. The shock was enough to make even the strongest warrior falter, but Ryan gritted his teeth and stayed upright. Gasps rose from the watching aliens, some in admiration, others in disbelief. Syrinx lowered the staff slowly, her smile returning. "Now," she said, "you may sit if you still can." The challenge in her voice was clear. She returned the weapon to the guard and stepped back toward her throne, her gaze never leaving him. Ryan did not move immediately. His body ached from the strike, but his will remained untouched. He would decide when and how he sat, not because she commanded it, but because he chose it. The pain from the strike still burned through Ryan's hip, but his face showed nothing. The courtiers leaned forward, expecting him to collapse into the seat she had offered. Instead, he shifted his weight slightly and remained standing. His eyes stayed locked on Sarek's, not in anger, but in unwavering challenge. The refusal was clear, and the whispers in the chamber grew louder. Sarek's smile faltered for the first time that day. She had expected a reaction, a stumble, a surrender. Instead, she was facing a man who refused to yield even when hurt. The lack of submission unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. She straightened her back and leaned casually against her throne, trying to make her next words sound effortless. "You are stubborn to the point of foolishness, human. That will not save you here." Ryan's voice was calm. "Maybe not. But it will save me from being broken." The simplicity of his answer carried weight. Some of the aliens shifted uncomfortably, sensing the balance in the room changing. Sarek's tilted her head, her golden eyes narrowing as she studied him. She was not used to anyone, especially a human, resisting her so openly in her own hall. It was a contest of endurance now, and neither seemed willing to be the first to step back. The guard who had brought the pain staff stood at attention, waiting for further orders. Sarek's glanced at him but did not speak. Instead, she let the silence stretch, hoping it would force Ryan to move first. The room was heavy with stillness, broken only by the faint hum of the palace's energy systems. Ryan did not shift his stance. He seemed carved from stone, his presence as solid as the pillars lining the hall. Finally, Sarek stepped away from her throne. Her steps were slow, each one deliberate. She circled him again, her eyes scanning for weakness. "You do not sit," she said softly. "Perhaps you think it makes you strong. But strength is also knowing when to yield." Her words were meant to provoke, but Ryan did not take the bait. He kept his gaze forward, his breathing steady. Her frustration was starting to show in the faint crease of her brow. She stopped in front of him again and crossed her arms. "Tell me, human," she said, "how long do you plan to stand here, defying me in front of my own people?" Ryan answered without hesitation, "As long as it takes." The bluntness of his reply drew another wave of murmurs from the gathered aliens. A few even allowed faint smiles to form, as if impressed by his resilience. Sarek's noticed them, and it only deepened her resolve to win this exchange. With a flick of her hand, she dismissed the guards to the edges of the chamber. The movement drew attention, and the whispers faded to silence again. "Very well," she said. "Let us see how long you last without help." She took a seat once more, her eyes fixed on him. The act was calculated. She wanted him to feel the pressure of time, the weight of every gaze in the room. But Ryan remained still, his presence as steady as it had been from the start. Minutes passed. The tension thickened. The discomfort in Ryan's leg grew sharper, but he ignored it. Each second he remained standing made Sarek's attempt at control look weaker. The courtiers began to shift their attention between the two of them, their expressions no longer showing the same certainty in her dominance. Sarek's noticed this, and a small spark of irritation flickered in her eyes. At last she spoke again. "You are not like the others we have dealt with," she admitted. "Most would have bent by now." Her voice was calm, but the words felt like a reluctant acknowledgement. Ryan gave a slight nod. "Then maybe it's time you see that humans aren't as easy to break as you think." The sentence landed heavily in the chamber. Even the air seemed to hold still for a moment after he said it. Sarek's gaze lingered on him, searching for some sign of weakness. She found none. Slowly, she leaned back in her throne, the faintest trace of a smirk returning to her lips. "We shall see, human. We shall see." The challenge in her voice was still there, but now it was edged with something else, a grudging respect that she would not yet admit out loud. The atmosphere in the hall had shifted. What had started as a demonstration of dominance by Sarek was turning into a silent contest of endurance. Ryan stood unmoving, his stance as solid as when he first entered. The aliens in the chamber now watched with a different kind of interest, no longer seeing a human simply being tested, but a challenger who refused to bow under pressure. Syrinx noticed the change. Her people were drawn to strength, and this human's refusal to break was beginning to stir something in them. She could not allow the balance of power to tip in his favor. Rising from her throne, she descended the steps slowly, her boots making deliberate sounds against the polished floor. Each step was a reminder that she still controlled the pace of the encounter. When she reached him, she circled once more. "You stand there as if you believe this is a victory," she said in a low voice. "But your body will give out before your will does." Her golden eyes studied him closely, searching for even the smallest crack in his composure. Ryan did not reply. The silence was as much a weapon as his words had been earlier, and it was beginning to work against her. The courtiers shifted in their seats, whispering again. This time the whispers were not mocking but speculative. They were questioning who would win this contest. Some were even starting to admire the human's resilience. Syrinx heard it too, and it tightened something in her chest. The court's perception mattered, and right now, Ryan was shaping it in ways she had not intended. She stepped closer, invading his space again. "If you think your stubbornness will make me respect you, you are mistaken," she said firmly. "Respect in my hall is earned by knowing your place." Ryan's eyes did not waver. "Then maybe it's time your hall learns a new way to define respect." The words were measured, not shouted, but they struck with the weight of a challenge. No one in the room could ignore. A ripple of surprise moved through the audience. No one spoke to her like that, not here. Syrinx's lips pressed into a thin line, though her eyes still glimmered with a hint of interest. She had expected defiance, but she had not expected this level of resolve to remain after her strike. Her pride demanded a response, yet part of her was reluctant to admit that his endurance was beginning to earn her attention. She gave a sharp nod to one of the attendants, who stepped forward carrying a tall ceremonial staff carved with intricate symbols. It was not a weapon, but a symbol of authority, often used in public challenges. Taking it in her hands, Syrinx tapped it against the floor. The sound echoed in the chamber, silencing every voice. "Then let us see," she said, "how long you can hold that respect when the court itself tests you." Two guards moved into position, forming a wide circle around Ryan and Syrinx. The audience leaned forward eagerly, sensing that something rare was about to happen. Syrinx began walking slowly within the circle, her gaze never leaving him. "This is no longer about my command for you to sit," she said. "This is about proving who truly has the will to stand in this hall." Ryan remained in place, letting her words pass over him without reaction. The energy in the room was different now. The challenge had transformed from humiliation to something larger, a duel of pride and presence. Syrinx felt it too, though she would never admit it. Her steps slowed as she weighed her next move. This was no longer a matter of forcing him down. It was about finding a way to win without appearing to lose. After several tense moments, she stopped in front of him once more. "You will not yield," she said quietly. "That much is clear." Her gaze held his for a long moment, before she stepped back, returning the ceremonial staff to the attendant. "Very well. You may remain standing, but do not mistake my decision for defeat." The words were calm, but to those who knew her, there was a difference in her tone, a note that sounded like reluctant acknowledgement. The murmurs in the chamber did not fade after Syrinx stepped back. If anything, they grew louder. The courtiers were unsettled, not because the human had won, but because the contest had ended without him being forced into submission. In their culture, that was a rare outcome, and it would be remembered. Ryan stood silently, still refusing to move toward the seat she had offered from the start. Syrinx returned to her throne with a slow, steady walk. Her golden eyes remained on him even as she sat down. She rested one arm on the armrest, fingers tapping lightly against the carved surface. "You have made your point," she said at last. Her tone was controlled, but there was a faint undercurrent of something else, an acceptance she did not want to voice openly. Ryan inclined his head, slightly in acknowledgement. He did not smile, nor did he look smug. His calm demeanor was part of what made his defiance so effective. It was not a rebellion born of anger, but of quiet strength. The aliens in the room took notice of this, and their expressions shifted subtly. They were beginning to see him as more than just a guest or an opponent in a power game. One of the older courtiers, a tall alien with deep blue skin, rose from his seat. "Hi, lady," he said, his voice carrying through the chamber. "This human has shown the will of a warrior. Perhaps he deserves a place at the council table." His suggestion was bold, and it drew a mix of surprise and agreement from those present. Ryan did not react outwardly, but he noted the shift in tone among the voices around him. Sarex's gaze sharpened at the suggestion. It was one thing for her to acknowledge his resilience privately, but for the court to speak of elevating him to a position of influence was another matter entirely. "He is not of our kind," she replied, "and our customs are not his," yet there was no denial of his strength in her words. Her voice carried caution, not dismissal. The blue-skinned courtier inclined his head. "Strength recognizes strength, no matter the form it takes." Several others murmured in agreement. Sarex leaned back slightly, her expression unreadable. She could feel the weight of the court's shifting opinion pressing on her. If she openly rejected him now, it might appear as if she was clinging to pride rather than leading with wisdom. Ryan remained silent, letting the debate unfold without his interruption. He knew that sometimes the best way to win influence was to let others argue in your favor. Every passing moment where he remained composed made the idea of him being an equal feel more natural to those watching. Sarex's eyes narrowed slightly, as if she recognized the subtlety of his tactic. Finally she raised her hand, and the chamber fell silent. "Enough," she said. "The council will decide the matter in due time." Her voice left no room for argument, but it also left the door open for the possibility. That choice alone was a quiet concession, one the court would not fail to notice. Ryan gave a short nod, acknowledging her authority without surrendering his own stance. The attendants moved to resume the planned agenda for the day, but the earlier contest still lingered in everyone's thoughts. Several aliens stole glances at Ryan, their expressions no longer filled with mockery. Some looked at him with curiosity, others with the cautious respect reserved for those who had proven themselves unexpectedly formidable. Sarex herself kept her gaze fixed ahead, though her mind was still on him. As the meeting continued, Ryan stood quietly at the edge of the chamber, his posture unchanged. He knew this was far from over. The true test was yet to come, and it would not be decided by who could sit or stand the longest. It would be decided by whose influence would shape the fragile peace between their worlds. For now he had made his first mark, and it was one the Varelian court would not soon forget. The Pave council meeting concluded with formal words, but the air still carried the weight of what had happened earlier. The courtiers filed out in orderly lines, their expressions thoughtful. Ryan stayed where he was, waiting for the chamber to empty. Sarex remained seated on her throne, her posture poised but not as rigid as before. Her eyes stayed on him as if measuring whether the game between them was over or simply paused. When the last of the attendants left, she rose from her throne and stepped down toward him. Without the eyes of the court upon them, her movements were less calculated. "You were not supposed to last," she said quietly. "You were supposed to bend, to sit, to accept your place." Her tone lacked the sharp mockery it had carried before. Now it was steadier, tinged with something closer to curiosity. Ryan gave a faint nod. "And yet I didn't." His words were simple, but the meaning behind them was layered. This was no longer about a single act of defiance. It had become a statement about the way humans carried themselves when challenged. Syrinx's golden eyes lingered on him for a long moment before she turned away, pacing slowly toward the center of the room. "I could have ordered my guards to force you," she said. "I could have made you sit by pain or by restraint." She stopped, glancing over her shoulder at him. "But then you would not have been the one humiliated. I would have been, for needing such force." There was no arrogance in her words, now only the sharp awareness of how power could shift when pride was wounded in public. Ryan took a step closer, his voice calm. "You chose not to humiliate yourself. That was the wise choice." She studied him carefully, as if weighing whether he was complimenting her or simply stating the truth. "Wisdom," she said, "is not what my people saw today. They saw a human who stood against me in my own hall and left me unable to press the matter further." She gave a short, almost bitter laugh. "That is why I can't sit in my own court without remembering it," she admitted. "Every time I take that throne, they will remember how you stood when I told you to sit. They will remember how my challenge ended without your defeat." Her words were blunt, and Ryan could see that saying them cost her something. But there was also a strange freedom in the honesty that had entered her voice. He nodded slowly. "Then perhaps they will also remember that strength is not about forcing someone down. It's about standing your ground without breaking." She turned fully to face him, her arms folding loosely across her chest. For a moment, the sharpness in her expression softened. "You've changed how they see you," she said. "And perhaps how they see me." The pause in her words carried a weight she did not explain. The tension between them no longer felt like hostility. It was something different and understanding that neither had expected to reach. Syrinx walked past him toward the tall doors of the chamber, her steps measured. She stopped beside him just long enough to speak quietly. "Our next meeting will not be in this hall. When that time comes, you will not be treated as a guest. You will be treated as an equal." Ryan gave the smallest of smiles. "Then I'll be ready." Her golden eyes met his one last time before she left the chamber, the heavy doors closing behind her. The echo of the moment lingered in the vast space. He stood there for a moment longer, knowing the day had changed more than just the balance between two individuals. It had shifted a piece of the fragile peace their worlds shared. As he finally turned to leave, he knew that Syrinx's inability to sit in her own court without recalling this day was not just about her pride. It was about the fact that, for the first time, a human had stood before her, unbroken, and forced her to see strength in a new way. That memory would stay with her and perhaps shape the future of both their people.